So welcome to WCDB Albany. My name is Eric, and this is Strange Quark Radio, a weekly radio show here on WCDB. And I'm excited to have two special guests, not in the studio with me today, but here electronically, telepathically, through the magic of the internets. We have Bobby Matador and Baby Jane from the band ONEIDA. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Thanks for having us.
yeah, thanks for having us, Eric.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on the air. WCDB has been trying to play some ONEIDA and get behind you guys. And I know there's a new record coming out. We'll get a chance to talk about that. Also, a show coming up, which we'll plug. That's happening less than a week from now, this coming Friday, right? Friday night.
Yep, that's the 14th at No Fun in Troy.
Thank you. Yeah. Friday, what are we in June, right? June 14th? Jeez.
Yep.
Friday, June 14th in Troy at No Fun. You can catch ONEIDA with Sky Furrows and Wax Shamu, and it's going to be a great night. So I encourage folks to check that out. So I guess, there's lots of ways we could do it. We could go historically. We can kind of start from the beginning. We can start with now. I guess let's talk about the new record. So you guys have a huge body of work. You've got 16 full-lengths, I think, full-length records. And this is the 17th coming out now. Is that right?
I don't think either of us could definitively corroborate or deny exactly how many albums. There's like cassettes here and there. There's
yeah.
What do you count a triple record as?
Right.
Yeah, sure. That's the ballpark. It's like
That seems like a fair number.
Yeah. It's an impressive body of work.
The first full-length album came out in 1997.
Yep.
And so now we're in 2024. Those are accurate data points. Everything in between is a blur.
So let's talk about the new record a bit, and then we'll jump back to some of the history, because I know you guys started at different points. Bobby, you started at the beginning of the band, right? And Jane, I think you came in a little bit later.
No, we entered at the same time, right?
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
We
both
were guns for hire for the first tour. We're the ringers.
Nice.
You'll notice it for everyone, which I assume is everyone who's listening right now and who resides in Troy or Albany or even Bennington, maybe, who will be at the show.
I would say the Tri-City area.
Tri-City area, easily. And then all the people that are going to commute from Buffalo,
Philadelphia.
Yeah, the basic
Toronto.
I think all of you will notice, everyone who attends, that as far as musicianship, it's obvious that Bobby and I were the ringers that were hired for the first tour. You'll really see it. It's like we try to kind of take the edges off and dumb it down a bit so it blends a little more with the other guys. But we were brought in. We were both part of the recording process in the first record, but it was a project that was mostly Kid Millions and Papa Crazy, who kind of a lot of the writing and recording, and Bobby and I were both part of that. But then we officially were. Is this fair to say this way, Bobby? Like in the fold for starting with that first tour, would you say? Or
yeah, I mean, well, they had a recording that was going to come out, and it was like, oh, let's try and promote the recording and go on tour for 8 weeks. Yeah. There was a week break in there, but. Yeah, so we went, and we'd all played together before.
Okay.
Various bands. I mean, Jane and I played together in a band. Jane and Kid had played together in a band. Kid and I played together in bands. So we all knew each other.
A lot of history there. Yeah.
A lot of history. It goes back 3 decades plus.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And that I would assume, that makes a difference playing together now, that you've got all those decades of kind of communication and hanging out and playing together and touring together.
Yeah, exactly. I like that you mentioned communication first, because I think that's part of it. When you're in a band, like, so ONEIDA has been a steadily working band producing new music now for whatever, 27 years. So no time off, really. And the thing that I think makes the biggest difference is interpersonal communication and musical communication are like things that we don't really, or they're like low drama. And it's real. We know each other really, really well. Which doesn't mean we don't get mad at each other. I mean, obviously, like we're family.
Yeah.
but it's, yeah, it's like we've paid some dues in certain ways that make being in this band um really like possible for us at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. There's a, the communication piece is so important in any band, I think, but it's something that even as an audience member watching Oneida play on stage, it's pretty clear that you guys have a way of communicating that, it's not a brand new thing. I mean, it's something that you've honed over the years.
Yeah, it's almost entirely telepathic at this point. I mean, Jane and I barely talk.
Yeah. This is actually like really awkward. We're gonna talk through you today, Eric.
I get to be the mediator. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
I can do that.
It's true, but it's also like, it's like with a couple or whatever, the longer you're in a relationship, the more other relationships from your lives kind of come in, join you in the bed, like come in this case, join you in the van, like, and
Yeah.
play out through. And so we've been through a lot of profound moments of growing pains and growth, like celebration and connection. It is amazing. Like I love generally speaking, I love the range of how we communicate because we're all so different in that
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
too. And I've really come to respect and appreciate that so much over time.
Nice. So while we're talking about the past, we started talking about the history of the band. I first became aware of you guys in the late 90s. After that, maybe the second record came out, but I was living out in California at the time and in the Bay Area. And, was just reading about you on the internet and hearing about it, hearing that second record. And then all of my associations with the band were, that you guys were a New York band and part of a scene, and sort of I associate your early days with like Black Dice and Chick Chick Chick, some of those kinds of bands that were around in the late 90s. How important was that scene in Brooklyn, in New York, to kind of cultivating the early days of Oneida?
I would say the fact that we were where we were when we were, so Brooklyn in the 90s was really, really important. And there, you can name a ton of bands and musicians and artists who we are connected to and know and have played with. But the thing that's most important was that was a time and a place of like immense possibility when if you had an idea, no matter how dumb or outlandish, you know, there were people with the know-how to help you pull it off. There was just space available. But the thing that made the biggest impact on me, like, I moved, I moved to New York in 1996, beginning of 96, um, was just like the need to hustle and the need to actually the pressure to like do the ideas that you have. That to me, like I could have ended up in so many places where I would have had ideas to be like, yeah, man, we should do this, and like been comfortable letting it unspool at maybe a more leisurely pace. I don't know that I had the kind of creative self-discipline that I got.
Mm.
But I mean, New York was like boot camp. It was like every person you met at a party, right? Oh yeah, I'm working on a screenplay. The next time you saw them at the next party, you'd be like, yeah, my screenplay, I sent my screenplay out. And then it'd be like, oh yeah, I'm working on getting funding. And it's like everybody was doing the thing that they said they were gonna do.
Yep.
And that was a real life-changing experience for me in the greatest way.
Yeah, it must have been exciting. I mean, just that energy.
Yeah, for real. All
Yeah.
over the place.
And it was like, and I think as part of it too, I'd say sometimes I think, I mean, we have a lot of deep ties, connections, affection, appreciation for a lot of different bands and musicians and artists, like Bobby was saying. And I think a big piece of it too is I think almost more about like the common tie was often the series of spaces that we worked out of or played out of. So almost I think of like the partnership or the camaraderie was with the space, it was like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
places that like anchored us or inspired us or gave us a place to kind of just do stuff. But I agree with that sense of drive too. It's like everyone had 3 jobs, everyone had 5 projects, everyone was just like trying everything they could. And and cross-pollinating, but also just kind of supporting each other too. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
doing things. We'd go to practice, go see a show, come back with an idea, write something, record something, maybe go to another show after. It's a wild time.
It's also funny to like I'm gonna describe, Brooklyn, like Clinton Hill, Brooklyn in 1997 as expensive, which is obviously laughable now, but it was true. And honestly, that was part of it, was like everybody had to work, and I mean, well, that maybe not everybody we knew.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there's also another world, but we're not here to
Talk about that. Yeah.
I'll leave that where it is. Anyway, everybody we knew who wanted to do something creative also had to have a job because it was so
Yeah.
freaking expensive to live there. And that also meant like you were just like going full speed, right? Like you couldn't be leisurely about anything. So,
Yeah.
day job, get home. All right, we're playing tonight. I mean, I remember at one point an early like communication dust up in ONEIDA was like figuring out like, well, who gets which nights in the practice space, because we're gonna use them all, right? And it was
Right. Right.
ONEIDA and then other projects, and it was like it wasn't easy to even figure that out because everybody wanted to do everything every night.
I mean,
Wow.
that was a dilemma. It was a big deal to us when we got to at different stages when we had non-shared practice spaces, because we were a band, like Bobby just said, that would use the space almost as much as we could possibly use it, daytime,
Mhm.
nighttime,
Yeah. Yeah.
depending on people's jobs and stuff too. And we've often had some kind of rudimentary to pretty solid recording setup in there.
Mhm.
And it's always been hard to share space with other bands for that reason, just because
Yeah.
at that stage of our career, which was like a decade and a half at least, like that, we took up
Yeah.
a lot of space, and like we were
Yeah.
playing all the time.
Well, and Jane mentions like having a recording setup. We were fortunate enough to get like paid for that first record.
Okay.
There was an advance from a record label, which is a
Yeah.
a wild thing to think about in 2024, but it wasn't a lot, and we decided to use that money to buy recording equipment, to buy a tape machine,
And
um,
some mics.
and a board and some mics. And so we put ourselves in a position to always be able to be recording and working on records,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Capturing
really
the
learning how to
ideas.
use
Yeah.
that.
It's definitely fundamental to our style. Like
Yeah.
we could write through recording in addition to write through jamming, in addition to write on our own. We all had also like our classic like Tascam 4-track
Yeah. Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
So people would come in with a cassette tape and be like, check this out. And then, or we wrote from every direction. We wrote in all our different pairings as members and as a whole band, jamming and improvising. We wrote by getting a sound down on a deck and then building a song out from it as an inspiration. Or
Amazing.
it
Yeah.
let us write from every direction, which I think is really cooked into our sound and style.
So did you guys record all of the early albums yourself, or did you hit like
Typically
studios?
they're a mix. So our tape deck and board, we had a 1/2 inch 8-track machine.
Okay.
So what we would try and do was, for the most part, get like basically fill those tracks with enough that we were like, this is either this is the tune, or this is enough of the tune to then go work maybe in a studio and add a few
Mhm.
things and fix it. I mean, so you mentioned before our second album, which is titled Enemy Hogs,
Yeah.
that we came in, we transferred some reels, but we in order to get them overdubbed, like the 1998 technology we were working with, the best solution was at this studio was, well, we'll bounce that to ADAT and then we'll overdub on ADATs. And I'm sure there's a very,
Wow.
very limited swath of your listenership right now who's like, yeah, ADATs. And everybody else is like, whatever,
Right.
don't care.
Yeah.
There are probably a chunk that think they know what you mean, but they're actually thinking of DATs too. That's
right.
ADATs are even more obscure.
So we have the masters of Enemy Hog are these collection of ADATs. You know, it looks like little VHS boxes.
Yeah. Like, that's your
smaller.
You know, your like Headbangers Ball clips that you recorded in high school or whatever.
Right, exactly.
So, you know, often there was a mixture of like, oh, let's take this in and spin it out, you know, dump it off into I mean, eventually into like digital world, which was you know, complicated. But I think ultimately that helped us be like, oh, there's benefits to analog, there's benefits to digital, there's benefits to just exploring everything. We've always been real omnivorous, and I think, you know, we hit our own recording, the like DIY kind of self-assumption of the recording duties at a moment when the idea of like, well, let's just try everything and combine everything and make it sound as cool as we can fit our creative MO, and it was just the moment.
Yeah, the technology was there, but it was developing along with you guys, it sounds like. And, you know, you were finding new technologies that would allow you to capture the ideas.
Yeah, we've never been precious about it. I mean, we've recorded some stuff in a couple of studios, you know, onto 2-inch tape, and sounds freaking amazing. You know, that sound is incredible, but like it's like if you're a good band, you know, you can, and if you're creative people, you can find ways to make it sound cool no matter what it is.
So you mentioned being omnivorous as a band. I'm really curious about that because I feel that with your band, that there's this I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but there's this sprawling sense of ideas, that there's just so many possible directions that things could go in. And you see that in your catalog, I think. I mean, you've got records like Come On Everybody, Let's Rock, which is, you know, a very rockist kind of like sing along. For me, it's a car, you know, it's like I take that CD in the car, and it's great because, you know, I know all the words and I can sing along, and it's super catchy. And then you've got, you know, Rated O and other things that are much more expansive and sprawling sonically. How do you corral all the ideas, or do you even worry about that?
Well, I wouldn't say we worry.
That is, I second that.
I mean,
I'm saying that to you, Eric. If you could let Bobby know, I second that.
I'll tell him.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's typical for us to have multiple ideas that we're pursuing at various speeds. And you know, like there's always something or a couple things going on, and you know, like I might be writing songs this way and someone's recording like droney stuff over here, and we're just always going down roads, and then there's just we all like pursuing our own ideas and each other's ideas. So you know, especially as we have gotten older and our lives outside the band have become more complex, and then with the monkey wrench of, you know, the pandemic and quarantine dropped in, like there's been a lot of factors that have potentially like derailed or stunted certain things, but you know, it doesn't feel like a loss necessarily. Like things get put on hold sometimes. We have a wealth of unreleased music for sure. But yeah, we'll just, you know, when ideas take hold and we keep on pushing on them, and suddenly we're like, oh, we have an album, we have a project finished. Like, this is great.
Nice.
Do it.
Yeah, you start to hear, sometimes it's like there are obvious common threads because a bunch of songs are written in a moment, in a spirit, with a concept idea. Like Let's Rock was an album that was like, let's all do homework, let's go home and each write 2 rock songs and come back to the next practice, and then we're going to go into the studio over one weekend and record them all.
Amazing.
It was just like, that's an idea, you know, and then so sometimes it's an obvious, and then other times we're generating a bunch of music and everyone's bringing in different things, and you start to hear common threads, and you're like, hey, this is starting to sound like an album. Like, not all of it, but these 4 cuts really feel right. Let's build that out. Or
let's pursue where a path that this is pointing us toward.
Then I remember, as I sit here interviewing with you with Bobby, I want to name like one of those. then there's another moment, like one of those kind of creative and then like culling for an album, but also kind of building to an album moments when we were getting ready to, I guess it was probably going into the studio with to dump our tracks and finish things and do some live stuff for what became Each One Teach One, the double record.
Yeah.
We knew, we were pretty sure we wanted a double record, and we were and it had a lot of songs that made a lot of sense together, but we had just like one or two tracks shy of what we thought was the right fit, but we had a couple more tracks that had some solid, like a lot to them that we just needed to round out. And Bobby and I don't know if you remember this, Bobby, we spent one night in the studio just kind of adding some overlaying. We had some awesome like percussive tracks and good grooves. And we sat there, I think it was like maybe, oh my God, I can't, I can remember the line that we were like, we had your double decker ace tone and we were messing with the micro synth so it wouldn't track, so it was like jumping around octaves. Just sitting there like late into the night, just the two of us that night, like taking a couple more of our 8-track tracks and filling them out in a way that made them sync up well with the aesthetics of all tracks. And like those moments happen because of our style of creation together, you know, like that's one of my favorite ONEIDA memories that I remember. I probably think of that night like once a month. I'll have a moment of like, oh man, that was fun, just sitting around playing in the studio with Bobby, you know.
And you can definitely, like, I believe in the same era, possibly, for the same release. Also, I think it was me and Kid filled some cups with bottle caps and got some dental instruments and really like went to town on one of your recordings. And you're like,
oh, nice.
That's an interesting choice, guys. Thanks for that.
Like, oh, you did that on my song. Like I remember that was for Sneak Into the Woods. I had like I'd been out on a date with my now wife.
Yeah.
We were on the way home, and from the date and in the date and like hanging out with her, I suddenly, kind of like how I decided to propose to her, actually, I suddenly was like, and I had this idea for a groove, and I actually had my wife I was dating at the time drop me off at the studio on the way home.
She's still married him.
And she quit. Yeah, she's still married me. Like she helped me quickly get the kick drum level, so I wouldn't click. And then I was like, all right, you got to go. She left, and I recorded like the basic drum track. I played drums on that. I played the drums, the guitar line, and the vocals, and then just had it on the deck and was like, just check it out, dudes, when you can. And then Kid and Bobby were into it and did this like dental tool bottle cap and a Dixie cup thing, and I was like,
and a wood flute.
Yeah, it wasn't even
sorry,
a wood,
man.
like a fife stolen from like a colonial town Williamsburg or something.
Yeah.
So like the next time I go into the studio, this like little like freaky psych ode to my love for my wife is like, like words I can't say on the radio.
And yet the marriage survived and the band survived.
And the band survived,
I mean
there aren't many bands that would, sort of allow that sort of freedom too. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's really beautiful about ONEIDA is it seems like from an outside perspective, like there's freedom for any of you guys to try things.
It is a band where you can play whatever you want.
Yeah.
And that probably sounds unappealing to somebody listening to this on the radio. Like, yeah, cool, I'm not going. But one of the things that I think I'm pretty confident in saying is that like people who show up and see us play live, even if we're maybe not what they're not expecting us to be their particular cup of tea or cup of bottle caps, like what they will see and experience is that freedom, but like because we have this communicative history and relationship, I think what's happening on the stage is very inviting to people, even if you're like, I don't know if I like loud, abstract, freaky psych rock. I think because of how we approach it and how we do it, it ends up inviting the audience in, and people can typically talk to us about having pretty powerful experiences at the shows. It's not like a solipsistic, like we're up there doing what we want and screw you. It's
right.
It's a pretty communal pretty communal experience, I think. It took me a while to figure that out. It probably took us a while to get there, honestly.
So was there a conversation about that? I mean, did you talk about wanting to impact the audience in a certain way, or was it just like, let's do our thing and hope people come along?
Yeah, probably the latter, but it's, we've always wanted a big passionate audience.
Yeah, yeah.
I
We
don't
don't
think that's like
revel in being obscure.
yeah, I don't think that's like out of a band mandate or choice or strategy. That's more like a value that we all have in common
Huh.
as people, and so we work well together, and you feel it as a band experience. I think, yeah, like I think that's the kind of thing we would notice. Like we'd start touring and playing shows and having experiences with live with people, audiences or some semblance of something you could call an audience, people who weren't in the band who were there, and
Right.
and then and then start to you like that kind of after show thing where you're like, that was cool, that like, yeah, those two people left, they seemed pretty bummed, but that kid came right forward and just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
totally didn't seem to get what we thought he was getting, but he was into it. Did you talk to him later? Yeah, man, like he heard stuff that I would not want us to, whatever
Yeah,
it is. It's
yeah.
like being able to even get into where people go with it that isn't our thing. And when you're
Right.
sharing those memories or those conversations with each other later, driving to the next town, and realizing like everyone's enjoying those stories. No one's like,
Yeah.
feeling like a loss of control over that, or, saying something harsh that disrupts that experience. But generally, people are all resonating with that.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it also seems like there's a willingness, and again, this is all just my perspective, so tell me if I'm way off base with any of this, but a willingness to challenge audiences a little bit too, and to kind of say like, yeah, we're going to do a 20-minute jam, or we're going to do a 2-hour jam, or whatever the approach that particular night might be. It's sort of like hopefully hopefully kind of building some trust in the audience, but then challenging them a little bit so that they don't always just stay in their comfort zones and hear the songs as they are on the records, maybe.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent that's true, although I think it's more about us pursuing something that we think is cool and recognizing that it may be a challenge for
Yeah.
Being okay with
it's not like prescriptively a challenge,
Gotcha. Yeah,
but so it's like, here is a thing that we are pretty sure is going to be awesome.
yeah.
But I like something we've said for many years is give us 10 minutes, because sometimes people might hear the band and be like, whoa, this is a lot. Whoa, this is intense. Oh, I don't understand what these people are even trying to do. And then if you live in that world for a minute, often people find that there's like a language and a sound environment that really works for them. And it's funny, like we're talking about this as if everything is just bafflingly abstract, but like our new record, Expensive Air, and the previous record, Success, are full of songs.
Yeah, of
They're
course.
songs.
Yeah.
yeah,
They're
very
built,
clear riffs, clear melodies, clear
yeah.
structure.
Yeah.
They're
super
built with a
catchy. Yeah.
vocabulary. They're built with a vocabulary that we've assembled through
Right.
this like really, really wide range of experience. But we're just actually, it's interesting that you mentioned 1999's album, or maybe 2000 album, Come On Everybody Let's Rock, because these last two records are, I think, they have some kinship there.
Yeah.
We're different. We were a long way further down a bunch of roads, but
Right.
that
Right.
idea of like, these are songs, these are approachable in their way. I think is there. You probably have to be sort of damaged to find them catchy, but who out there listening to this right now is not a little damaged?
Right. So while we're on that note, I just want to remind listeners you're listening to WCDB Albany, and we're interviewing two members of the band ONEIDA who are playing in Troy on Friday night, June 14th at No Fun. So we've got Baby Jane with us, who's currently guitar player for ONEIDA, and Bobby Thatcher, who plays bass and keyboards. And both you guys sing, obviously, and everybody in the band kind of pitches in with vocal duties, I think. Does even
Yeah.
Barry sometimes?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I love that too. I love the fact that watching you live, it's a full band participation. It's not just like each person has his own little role. It just seems like everybody's kind of in it together.
Yeah, well, it's the O, you know, it's a circular relationship.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, rated O. Yeah, but that idea of the circle is kind of important to you guys.
Yeah, but it's become that way. I mean, a little bit like we like to have our cake and eat it too in terms of being, you know, are we serious or are we not serious? So, you know, we can say yes, it matters, or we can make a joke out of it, but I would say it's kind of real, and I think it does involve everyone in the audience too. Like we all experience it as a communal
Mm,
thing.
mm.
Like a show is there are other bands, there are audience members, there are people working, making sound happen, you know, like everyone is there and everyone is in that, you know, within the boundary. It's and there you're
Mm.
not locked in. It's a permeable boundary. You can leave.
Right, right.
But it is, I think we really feel it as this kind of all-encompassing, all surrounding thing. And so the tongue in cheek, you know, it's we're all in the O is like that has just the right balance of humor and sincerity that can shift so we can deny, you know, responsibility at any moment.
Plausible deniability. Yeah.
Exactly right.
What were you going to say? Something, Jane?
Oh, just about that. In the spirit of that, just thinking about like there's so many times at shows where during or right after a song, like some moments happen during a song, some moment of like connection or something like just transcends for a second. It might be something like one of it, like I'm doing it, or it might be something I witness and another person experience, like something Bobby does or Kid does or whatever, Shaheen. And 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 like, you know, there's that moment during or after a song where you make eye contact with someone who also witnessed that. Maybe it's the person who played it, maybe it's the person who you saw them reacting in the moment too, and you're kind of like, yeah, right. And you know you're talking about the same second, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I share those moments almost as often with random people in the crowd as I do
Interesting.
with people on stage. Like you'll catch someone's eye getting into something that you're hearing at the same time and be like, and there's this like little quick bond with someone you don't know who's in the crowd who heard some little note that Showtime hit that played off of something Bobby's doing and made it sound like another song for a second in a very cool way.
Yeah.
And I just think just speaks to that permeability of it. Like there's, I think probably a third of the time that moment of connection and that shared check-in after a song I'm having with someone in the crowd as much as I'm having with someone on the stage, you know, which is this, that's how it feels to me. I think that speaks to what Bobby's describing too.
Those moments make it seems like make it worth doing. You know, those are really exciting and sort of, you know, those moments of connection, whether it's with each other on stage or with an audience member, like really amazing.
It's, I mean, certainly for me, that's why it's one of the reasons why playing live remains an important part of being in Oneida.
Yeah.
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 Is that
So what
not
about
easy?
improvisation? I mean, I know you guys have, you know, over the years developed a language of improvisation with each other too. When you're doing live shows, and it's probably changed over the years too, because you're like you said with the last couple of records, you're doing more songs, but there still seems to be like some at least attention to moments of improvisation during the set. What kind of role does it play for each of you?
I would say I appreciate, I think you've accurately described the fact that like improvisation is always in our music. The amount of it or the extent to which we're interpolating it, you know, really varies based on the material and approach we're taking in a given night. But I think there's a mindset, and it's funny, Jane and I have talked about this in our musical lives and our non-musical lives. There's a mindset that comes with being an improviser,
Mm-hmm.
which completely changes the stakes of how you play, even if you're playing something that's like scripted, right? Because it no longer actually matters what's supposed to be happening. You know, like if there's a mistake or an unexpected detour or somebody is just like ripping on something and decides to extend it or take it in a different direction, like we are all living in a mindset where it's like, oh, sweet, we're doing this now.
Right.
And that is like incredibly powerful and liberating.
Liberating. Yeah, I love it. I mean, it seems so different than what a lot of other bands do, where it's like, let's recreate the songs and let's give the people sort of a semblance of the record and, kind of make it a little rote. But there's a liberation, it sounds like, that comes from having some room for improvisation.
There's also an aleatoric element to it,
Yeah.
there's a chance-based element to it. We make sure to not really know how to play our songs very well. That is also highly liberating.
We have an affectionate shorthand for that phenomenon, which is called putting it through the O pedal. we have a literal Oneida pedal that someone gave us after a show in Italy once. That's actually it's like a tone generator, like with a
Oh wow.
An optical sensor, so you can
Yeah.
it's like a theremin-y tone
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
But it's the Oneida pedal. But we joke about the Oneida pedal really being like a random circuit that's just kind of like you put in an intended signal and stomp on it, and like anything but what went in comes out.
Right.
That's what when we talk about like doing, because we like to do usually have like some covers peppered into our stuff at any given moment, and we always joke about like, well, it's going through the Oneida pedal, so it's going to be unrecognizable. So we could probably record it and put it on our album too.
Right.
Well, and honestly, like this is I mentioned like the vocabulary, the language of how we play, because of how long we've been doing this together. When we go somewhere unexpected, or one person's going here and another person's going there, and you hear it happening, it sounds really cool to us.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, right? So then that creates a whole other set of possibilities. It's like you're using these vocabularies that sound familiar. It's like, to use an example, it's like we got a song where, I decide for whatever misguided reason to stay on one section, and somebody else is like moves on to another section, and then you hear these things together and you're like, oh, listen, this is amazing. And then it's like, so in that case, I better sing this part here and it'll sound different than it's ever sounded. But like it because we are who we are and we play the way we play, it ends up sounding like the stuff we mean to do anyway.
Yeah, there's also, and again, like all these kind of observational comments I'm making are just my perspective, but like there's what's really evident to me watching you play and listening to your records is just I talk about it when I tell other people about Oneida. It's just like there's a pure joy in what you do that kind of emanates from the stage. Nobody looks bored on stage. It just seems like, okay, this band is in the moment having a blast. And that sounds like, kind of a surface level observation to say, but I think there's something magical about it, that there's this joy that emanates from each of you and is then therefore kind of really infectious to the audience. So I don't know if that resonates, that idea of joy, but
I think so. That's great to hear.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah, that is a reminder to your radio audience to come to No Fun in Troy on Friday, June 14th, because you
absolutely
will experience unbridled joy.
Unbridled joy, right?
Not a place of fun, but a place of unbridled joy.
Right. No fun, only joy.
There you go. We'll work it. So what about musical influences? All of you guys have different, I'm sure you came up listening to different things and different, I'm sure there's some common stuff, but like, what are the common touchstones for everybody in the band?
Oh man.
Big question.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm 50 years old and I've been music obsessive for most of those years. So like, and I think that's true of everyone in the band. Probably a more interesting approach is like, where did we come from and what did we bring into the band? Because I can like point Jane and be like, oh, Jane has this metal background.
Interesting. Okay.
From our youth.
Yeah.
Like not like
what was yours, Bobby?
I don't know, probably like new wavy 80s alternative, New Order and the Smiths world and Joy Division
Right.
stuff, you know. I mean, Kid is like a Grateful Dead fan. He and I played
Yep.
in a Dead cover band in high school,
I
mostly
had
because
heard that. Yeah.
we got asked to, and we were like, great, we get to play. And I was like, I don't love these tunes, but
Yeah. So what
uh,
about the other guy, like the other three members? Are there, I mean, is there a sort of, I mean, are there a couple common bands or artists that everybody loves and just, shares a passion for?
I mean,
Now there are, I mean, I think this is something, it's a funny question to ask 27 years into this. And
Yeah.
that's just into Oneida, not into all of our creating
Right.
together, like Bobby
Right.
referenced, like predating it. But like now, most things that other fellas in the band have been passionate about, I love now too. You know,
Mm.
most. The only,
not the Smiths.
I was going to say, I'll offend a quarter of the audience by saying the only band I still don't like is the Smiths. But
Right.
other than that, I've been turned on to a lot of wonderful, all the good music I've been turned on to. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, so it's, and we have some commonalities in our roots that, like, Showtime and I, the two current guitarists in the band, both have a strong heavy metal foundation in our childhood, like junior high
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
When we learned to play guitar to metal riffs, you know.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so we have like these licks in our heads that are just like they're the foundational parts of our like guitar vocabulary, you know.
Yeah.
But God, what are, I mean,
I would say, so in high school, I
now.
went to high school with Kid Millions and we played in bands. And one of the things that we discovered right toward the end of our high school career was the band Can, like, you know,
Yeah.
German krautrock. And that has been like a through line, and the kind of various places that'll take you when you explore, I think has been something that has landed really hard across this whole band.
Yeah.
Um, you
Well,
And
know,
then like,
they also had a working methodology as a band that sounds like some of the periods of Oneida, in terms of having a dedicated space, rehearsal space,
mhm.
recording space, and just recording everything and getting ideas down and doing a lot of improv and then listening back and saying, "Oh, this could be something, something we played last night sounds good today. Let's make that into a song." That was, at least from my limited understanding, kind of what they did.
I mean, yeah, yeah, yeah. All gates open.
Right, right, exactly.
I think
Um,
that's another thing too when we talk about shared musical foundations. Like there are, we we have band. We're all kind of, I mean, just voracious consumers of music and the
Mm, mm.
culture of creation. And so we'll often, I think Oneida has found really critical inspiration at very like formative moments from particular musical or artistic movements where we've kind of emulated, things like have your own recording studio because of bands like Can or
Yeah,
Faust,
yeah,
or have a certain relationship with the music industry because of this band or that band, or a certain relationship with touring or the audience because of this scene, or whether it's like the kind of indie music scene, or growing up, like with the free shows in DC with Fugazi and all of that stuff, which is
yep,
something that's in our, some of our shared roots, you and I are,
yeah, totally.
and there's it like all, because we have a really eclectic taste collectively, and also that we're very curious people who like to like dive into the histories and contexts of things. I think we've borrowed a lot from this huge range of musical cultures to kind of find some tools and tricks and trades to like allow Oneida to create the way we have. I mean, we're definitely indebted to the like all the people that have like found out, cracked the code about like how to create a fertile or expansive environment to create. We've borrowed
Yeah,
a lot of movements.
yeah, yeah,
That's
and certainly
very
the sort of two of the touch words that folks talk about when they write about Oneida are repetition and minimalism. And that's obviously a part of Can and Faust and some of that history. but those kind of ideas of, you know, repetition leading to something unique and not just being about repeating things, but actually kind of transcending something and making something new through repetition seems to be a strategy you guys employ really well.
I think that's part of our basic foundation. It's not the only element, but it's that, yeah, that finding that meaning and value in that approach is like always there for all of us.
Yeah.
It's funny, I found myself just thinking like, okay, our first tour in 1997, we had one record. And so we prepared a bunch of covers to play on that tour and on the next tour. And I think back and like that actually paints a pretty good picture of, so we had a Motley Crue song and an ESG song and a
Yeah.
Boo song and Modern Lovers and Hey Joe.
Blue Oyster Cult maybe on
Blue
that.
Oyster
Oh,
Cult.
nice. Yeah.
And then like Question Mark and the Mysterians was like the next place, and we did Dream Syndicate and
Let Me Try some MC5.
yeah, MC5, a couple, I think
nice.
a couple things from the second MC5 record.
Man.
And then in 1998 at Halloween, we were the MC5 and played Kick Out the Jams, which was recorded on Halloween 1968. So for the 30th anniversary, we were the MC5. So that gives you a fair sense of like, I think like the genesis of shared music, but a lot of those were coming in from one or two of us.
Yes.
Then being absorbed into the sound.
Yeah.
And then there are these random foundational moments like, you know, because like during college, well, I went to college. Most of the time I was in college, I was at school in Vermont where Kid was, and there was a small electronic music studio there that I didn't take any music classes in college, but I had a handful, this like pocket of friends who took music classes, Kid being one of them, and they took this electronic music class and got turned on to experimental electronic music as part of that in this like really controlled high fidelity environment. So I remember Kid introduced me to Stephen Reich through that experience. And so that I was just actually playing for my children the other day. I was like, you need to check this out. And I was playing that what is that song, Come Out by Stephen Reich. It's that layered thing where someone's describing the blood coming out of a bruise, you know, and then the layered experience of it. And you know, it's like sitting in a studio having, I don't know if it was Kid or he was around for it, but just being introduced to that. Like, so we have these pockets of experience too, or like Bobby and I overlapped for a year in college and played in basement bands together. And like the covers those people were playing a lot of them were introducing music. And also Bobby was deep into, and that group of friends there did a lot of record buying because there was such a great used record scene in that area. And so they were exposing me. Every time we went record shopping, I got exposed to like 20 more bands that they were common to those guys, but I had never heard, you know. So
at 50 cents an album, you can afford to listen to it all.
Give it a try, you know. On a good day, 33 cents.
Yeah.
Right. Those are great experiences. So let's shift a little bit. I want to, you know, make sure I don't keep you guys too long, but shows coming up on Friday in Troy at No Fun. Folks, if you're listening on the radio or on the internet, even if we upload this, you're listening to an interview with Bobby Matador and Baby Jane from ONEIDA. And let's talk about the new record. We haven't talked about the new record. Like, what's go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say, you mentioned the show at No Fun in Troy. So this album, which is called Expensive Air, our release date is July 19th. But we have the record and we will bring it to the show. Actually, the audience at No Fun in Troy will be the first people who will have the opportunity to pick up this record.
Amazing. And so we'll play in just a minute. We'll play the lead single from that album, which is called Here It Comes. And It's a great song, by the way. Really, you know,
Thanks.
it's got that energy that a single needs. You know, it's like really present. But yeah, talk about the new album. What was the genesis of the record? How is it different from the others, and sort of how does it fit in the bigger picture for Oneida?
It's songs, it's all, and it all has that kind of high energy feel. There's a little bit of more like of a wind down on the second side, but it's really it's a burner. It's yeah, I think of it as kind of a companion piece to the last record,
Mm-hmm.
Success. Um, it doesn't sound quite exactly the same. It's a little bit looser and more out of control in some ways. But it had a pretty similar like creative process, which was putting together demos of songs and then having the band like just kind of rip through versions of those songs. So not like the demos weren't like, here are all the parts for the songs. It's more like here's words and shape and attitude, and then like let it take root and let the band's way of being kind of give it life. But that
Interesting.
isn't always the process we've used, right? Like Jane alluded before to, we've written things just by jamming together. We've written things like accidentally, being like juxtaposing two things that already existed. So this is more like a songwriting and translation kind
Mm.
of process, much like Success. And I think it lends itself to like pretty like focused ripping shows, which has been fun, really fun. We got
Yeah.
I would say like it's a little more out of control than the last.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
I would just second that piece. It's like this collection of songs, especially partnered very, very well with the songs from Success, the
Mm.
preceding record,
Hmm.
is it's just like it's so fun to play them live. It's so fun. So it just feels like I always enjoy playing, but a show isn't always a treat. Sometimes it's like hard work pleasure, you know?
Right,
I
right.
have to say these songs just they feel like a treat. Like when we pick stuff for the set list, I just am like I get kind of like excited to just oh yeah yeah oh yeah, it's we have different energy with every collection of songs that we kind of roll out on tour with, and I enjoy all of it. I love playing with
Great.
Ida, but this one's just kind of fun, like
Which is going to put us at odds with the venue on
I
Friday.
know I know
Because there's
Because
no fun to be had there.
well,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're demanding no fun or if they're just I don't know. We've played at no fun before and
You
absolutely
have. Yeah.
and
yeah, we had a
are
great time.
Yeah.
taking our shots here, but these are shots out of love. That is one of the most amazing venues, and I think it is such a cool like communal experience. So
Yeah, we're
um
lucky to have it here, and it's
yeah,
lucky that you
that's where
guys
I'm
are
at.
willing to come back and play again. And
Oh my God, yeah.
I've been in the good, just for the listeners, I've been in the good fortune situation of seeing you guys live, I think 5 or 6 times in the past 2 years at least. And every time is different, but every time is always ripping. I mean, that's the word you used. It's always, a high energy performance. It's always totally compelling from the audience perspective. They're really, highlights of my show going experience the last decade, really. So those shows have been really amazing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Cool, man. Us too.
This is a big question, but I guess I'm curious about like, as you talk about the new record comes out, what was the date again?
July 19th is the formal release date of
Okay, July 19th, new record, Expensive Air comes out. And that's on Joyful Noise again, is that right?
Joyful Noise, same label as the last
Okay.
Success, the one previous to Success, Romance.
Yep. Yep. So, like I think about a band like yours that's been going since 97, the sort of relationship to the word ambition I'm curious about.
Hmm.
sort of, what were the goals? How have the goals of the band changed over time? And, because again, from my perspective as an outsider, I see you guys on stage and talk to you after shows, and I'm like, that's a band I want to be in. That's a band that seems like they are exactly where they want to be, and they're functioning they're firing on all cylinders. They're just like, they're doing it right with integrity, all that good stuff. But I also know, that some bands, have greater ambitions and want to get bigger and sort of reach wider audiences. What's that relationship to the concept of ambition been like for the band?
Well, I think we've been pretty fortunate in that, like, two aspects. One is we all are interested in communicating with each other, and the other is we all have had relatively congruent, like, sense of ambition. And I'll use your words actually, Eric, because, like, I think our biggest ambition is we want to be in a band that we want to be in, and like that's it.
Yeah,
And that
yeah.
definitely should be money, power, respect, longevity, and a meaningful legacy. Um, and those priorities, might shift around a little bit here and there.
I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm done.
Yeah, I think something we've also often when I try to explain to other people in my, like, the non-music world people in my life, like, what this thing is that keeps, like, getting in the way of family vacations and stuff. I take, like, and my hackles get up when they say things like hobby.
Right,
It's not
right.
a hobby, it's a disability.
Yeah. Like, when I try to explain the rage that it induces, I it's like I've always understood our goal to be to create circumstances through our band where we can pretty much do what we want to do when we want to do it and have it largely pay for itself,
Yeah,
so that we can, like, our jobs as members of the band are to scaffold the rest of our lives so our lives are sustainable and work without needing to lean on the band. And then the band does the best job it can to, like, be self-sustaining so it doesn't lean on our lives other than kind of us carving out space for it,
yeah,
and that has all, but the ambition has always been to kind of have the resources, whether it's connections to a label that will put stuff out, whether it's people to help us book shows, whether it's, like, some kind of finances to help us get to shows, whether it's about a vehicle to get there, but, like, to be able to do what we want to do when we want to do it so that we can truly, create unfettered. And I feel like we've been successful at that for almost all of our 27 years.
I've had it reflected back to me, which helps me understand from people that we're really fortunate in, having built that structure, being able to stay kind of creatively productive. And
yeah.
it's hard to say where that is coming from, but it's
Oh,
all
it's from
of
me,
us.
Bobby. It's from me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's like that's a little bit of, like, don't look too closely at it,
Interesting. Yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing, because everything that Jane says is like, that's a perfect encapsulation of our ambitions. But, like, in the grand scheme of things, all of that is worthwhile because there's a devotional, like, joy that we get from the act of being in a band. But
Yes.
Yeah,
we're also, in addition to that, creating and producing things that connect with other people.
right,
And
right.
that's I think exciting and extraordinary. And like I said, I've had a couple of people be like, "Do you realize, like, it's actually at this point kind of bizarre that you guys keep doing stuff and making new music, and it's here and then it's there and then it's this way and then it's that way." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." And I joked before calling it a disability, but, like, um there's a thread of reality in that, which is like there's just this thing that we all share that like has to be fed.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm hopeful that it remains that way, because yeah, we're
Well,
all into it at this
I have to
point.
say it's a remarkable achievement, and I agree. I mean, it sounds like you guys are really fortunate to have what you have, and to, it didn't just drop in your laps. You worked hard for it, and you've kind of created this thing, the O factor, I guess, if you will, that sustains it and makes it work for everybody, and it doesn't ruin your lives, and it doesn't, bum you out, but it actually gives you a bunch of joy, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, record comes out July 19th, the new ONEIDA record. We've been talking with Bobby and Jane from ONEIDA. They're playing at No Fun in Troy this coming Friday night, June 14th. I think the show starts at 8 p.m. and hope to see everybody there. Thanks for listening. You guys have any last things to say?
No, just really looking forward to it. And thanks, Eric, for having us on your show.
Yeah, thanks so much, Eric. Looking forward to playing with you all, and everyone who attends, do say hi, because we like knowing who we're hanging out with.
There you go. So you've been listening to WCDB Radio, WCDB Albany. This is Strange Cork Radio, and we've been talking with ONEIDA. Thanks for listening.